Dear Judge Napolitano, Fox News and Whiting Forensics and Facebook and names on all sides of criminal and civil cases have people involved with the principal upskirt nature Facebook page of his campus, with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic, including women judges' roles, because of where and how they're playing games, since building upon too. Ray Reynolds was in a kindergarten class. I went to that school for 1 year on Valley. It was off Valley Crest, and the school closed that year after we, graduated or whatever. I was in kindergarten. I was 4 years old when I started in kindergarten, and then that school closed. Next to that school was a DeMora family. I don't know. I don't know if they're still there. A DeMora families, plural too, are involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and per him and per others in my campuses, they were influenced to do things they didn't want to do, so they didn't do it, which was put predicate acts with facts in databases, so others did it for them. And these are people that also have all kinds of, they're building upon predicate acts every year leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. These are people who made confessions regarding the World Trade Center, regarding rapes, regarding other child abusers, leaders of kids, their educators' roles, demonstrated roles. Whole bunch of people. I don't know Eric Olson and Matt Olson. I was like acting like a little bit like that with Syntax on Facebook, because before the World Trade Center attack, people tied to them had roles with the World Trade Center attack. And with the ongoing child abusers, leaders of kids, have brought up with the murders and untimely deaths. One at Trinity College, the people at it, next to it, difference of guilt, manifest use roles with it. An officer using the name Darth Vader involved with it. The same ones who were planting evidences on Covington Street. One of them said that bait and switch. I didn't ask him about it because I never had communications with him. They're trying to make just because they stood next to me, pretend I know him. I told him he had nice art. One of the ones who made the bait and switch. I believe they're tied to one of the families. They're tied anyway. Pre roles with the people, with Sandy Hook campuses, with judges and prosecutors, with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and then further hyper additionally with the state corrections officers and judicial branch officers. They have organized crimes and crime scenes. They have roles with methods as victims / hyper victims relative to how their roles self-evaluating. Their roles with the abuses of kids and pretending not to fathom and changing and faking what people say. They can't afford to have the right outcome in any case. Relative to everyone fighting to have pretend any country is a person. You guys have replaced what our founders told us to understand first. You have the people pretending, oh, this happened in this, and you don't know the 60s and you don't know the 50s. In other words, before our founders, they changed the whole plan. The whole Declaration of Independence, they were drafting. There was a slavery, torture, extortion method, North and South, entrenched. There were roles only permitted, and then America's founders were born. And then, plural, we were directed by James Madison, and by them, plural, who counter-extorted everyone, made them help in the Declaration. It was against the laws. It was against the sensibilities of the internationally monitored conversations to measure and maintain everyone as that state that couldn't be a nature of unity or independence. While from the tactically denatured earth, the ancients cultivated before they got away with calling anyone, let alone Native Americans, hunter-gatherers. They separated everyone from memory of education before it became criminally foreign influenced / hyper criminally foreign influenced. No one could fathom, anyone could make the whole world forget how nature shows us not to let science has become criminally foreign influence, hyper criminally foreign influence Two, and everyone's self-valued roles or sensing for the breaching method, just as it was originally. You guys are pretending things are debate as natures. You can't get onto paper legitimately. The only reason it's gotten away with, but I call you that, well, how it's gotten away with anyway, is relative to what they're putting predicate action with the databases. Eric Jensen, a Ray Reynolds, and a Joe DeMoro are involved with. I had a conversation with Ray Reynolds in grammar school. He has something to do with them planting evidence to put me in the same place with them, like with skiing or whatever like that, and then make it look like that. But it's not even his fault. It's his educators too. Ray Reynolds, he'll tell you we don't even know each other. He's involved with multiple state police families, interstate, and the FBI, and courts, foreign and domestic military, interbranch. Weathersfield police faked conversations with me and being at the police station as a kid and as an adult. I wouldn't even know about it. I not caught them. They put me in a fake conversation with WFSB, WTNH planting fake ties to me and to kids with proven child abusers, leaders, kids, first force roles, uncharged because they're still then and now. Interbranch were with their own kids involved, switching names, forging names with overt criminal enterprises tied to those same families. And the roles were actually the value. These are people with all sides of criminal and civil cases already. And the news at the same time, and the interbranch and intelligence put the same self-valued sequence shifts, the relative delusions. In other words, that's what's known. It was declassified. Our founders, plural, we don't know their names. They were using James Madison's plan. They had to force everyone else to make up excuses why and how at the same time everyone was being a resistance. Because there was layers of not just the internationally, but the internationally monitored conversations that had the suburbs already designed. They had houses that are still standing, already designed to cause negative value nature progressions acts in nature. People dependent upon value nature systems, not just criminally foreign influence. They had sick things, even slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies only permitted roles with it. Anyone speak up about it outside internationally monitored conversations, collusion anyway. That person was sensed and hurt through their own, as speaking as the human species body of individual bodies, because nature's nature shows us that it is generating. There is a distinct identity. It is this distinct identity that is generating distinct species bodies, birds, fish, humanity. And each species body is made up of individual bodies. And there are group differences that it generates that are only increasing value here. And to understand this is how to cause evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. Evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. That's how the ancients knew how to cause this, using the science of pantheism, using how it is functional, being a distinct identity of hyper-invisible but still discernible, therefore incompatible with the name. But part of its nature is. And the ancients discern that part of itself is a simultaneous nature. And it is equally increasingly valued as a simultaneous nature, how it is distinctly itself, the identity of nature, a hyper-invisible but still discernible nature, and nature as a word to use for identity's volume. And all volumes, even anything made up, is its. That which is generating totally different species bodies of individual bodies. And again, group differences like male and female, so that we could discern its body generating that, and or its body showing us if and when we are using systems tactically ulterior from its own. I mean, ulterior from its own, let alone tactical ulterior from its own, and all self-value collusion /S. Only remember, right where and how nobody self-values. Just like where and how nobody will allow someone to use how we have black people's rights of eyes. In a legal case where someone is also, oh, this is the research. By the way, campuses A through Z, if we pay attention, well, this is a serious thing. They replace what our founders communicated. We're not supposed to entertain people pretending, as they this is they were child abuse, to pretend like with passions and emotions and music playing in the background about Thomas Jefferson, about the founders when they say good or bad. Those are criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments that are collusion to keep the identity of relativity from discernment of the breaching method to ourselves. Not just it as a scientific value, but a human fact shipping nature breaching method that was already entrenched is a scientific value that was replaced right from the actual value in nature of James Madison's communications. James Madison, the only founder we know the name of. You guys don't know that because measured and maintained at campuses A through Z and with exceptions. And with exception nature too used to keep other things, others, ourselves, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to be blamed for where and how, right where James Madison's communications in our founders plural, because our founders plural with James Madison directed us to understand him and why he's the only founder that we know the name of. See, now we can discern that the names of the people, the sciences, that have been self-valued, but they were also used remotely self-valued. See, they were child abuse. You guys had this was obligated by nature itself and by James Madison. Then people use their knowledge of good and evil, to get over on correlation that they're like seek with the value of what came first. The beginning of the Old Testament, before it has the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, before that, it says, only defend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it, which is the voice of nature being personified, like parsing, making more positive out of what is already an identity of relativity, positive and negative simultaneously, as a quality of diffusion that is relative to and as Earth's a special difference, as our own, but distinctly. The rest of Earth and its species, they have no criminal foreign influence, let alone hyper-criminal foreign influences that got things like criminal foreign influences blamed wrongly until they were true. And then made both sides of that and every issue hide itself behind and through that. Complete possession over each age and nature of fact-keeping nature. You guys have audacity to pretend that we have free speech. You have to discern it relative to what we could actually discern, where and how the suburbs were designed for torture, extortion, to cause negative value nature progressions, acts of nature, dependencies upon what was hurting them. And help it through the help too, through the difference of that. Those three parts of time are bound. I'll gather around boxings, but makes no sound but shush. And/or it prefers the shush sound. Boxing prefers the shush sound. Martial arts prefer the shush sound. And wrestling does not prefer the shush sound. The sciences are bound, even the religions, because it's relative to a breaching method that took us to syntactically names of peoples of the names of the countries. They could only be operated by people from locations, areas, and states. everywhere the species body is. And the breaching method got those people at locate everywhere the species body is to use those names to counter what it caused, specifically to make people counter the other names of the phenomenon of grouping sports by nature, like countries' names. But nature also shows us it will only be itself as criminal insidiousness. It also shows us it will only be itself as hypercriminal insidiousness. The North and South had roles with slavery. Before America's founders were born, there was a breaching method entrenched. There were roles with what no one wanted roles with. All counters were collusion slash S too. Right? Where and how the breaching method needs to be kept out. Nature's demonstration to us. Nature demonstrates women's suffrage, attacks against Native American difference and means below the human feet, and with the waters, and with the air, and with time, and with reason, and with nature's method of. See, we're now through systems tactical ulterior from the hyper-native way. Nature itself shows us, takes conjunction to and completes the meaning of president slash chief, regardless of where that came from. If we understand James Madison's plan and what our founders communicated and why and how they could only let us know, they only had the security to let us know James Madison's name. Clearer than day, they wanted nothing to do with slavery. They wanted us to understand how they got away with teaching American history, how they did. Oh, they voted in these states. This is how it unfolded. This is how what the book said. They want to fight about a book, but they want to leave out what James Madison declassified. All lies. Be Charles who disbelieves. Please, someone tell Judge Napolitano. These are also former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, before and after the World Trade Center attack. As were collusions of people at and next to Fox Connecticut News, at and next to WFSB Channel 3 News, at and next to, I think it's on a different station, I don't know, WTNH, which is, I believe, in New Haven, near the FBI, too, no. Involved all along Route 175 in conjunctions to it and to that, planting evidences. And collusions we where and how were used remotely. Our A through Z. As victims slash hyper victims, but also preventing that from being demonstrated. Using, like, obviously Judge Napolitano, for example, with the YouTube channel Judging Freedom. He knows a lot more about James Madison than me. But obviously another way, /S. I read James Madison about how he detailed about how the breaching method had been entrenched. And they knew people were going to try to break out of it, out of all those crazy affronts on women, affronts on. And syntactically, it was prevented for layers of lists of reasons that were propagated by a breaching method that only permitted self-cultivated roles. And that only if as collusion /S, including with sensing for the breaching method while pretending other, while keeping other things, others or selves blamed for things that nature itself shows us to blame in the breaching method. It shows us that women's suffrage and slavery, changing what nature itself communicates with black people's whites of eyes. And roles with those are different subjects, but they're all equally valued as a human fact-sheeping nature breaching method. That was his multi-front exploitation of every human difference, of every difference. This is a replacement, a mimic of, as the voices of humanity. Otherwise, that body is sensed, including his majority of people, including his group, any grouping of nations. There are self-value collusion slash S with use slash S of principal treatments in syntax and nature as actually recorded relative to where and to how. Even the best experts, good people, were used remotely evil, mostly not realizing, pretending with passions and emotions, with music playing in the background, etc. That our founders were other than they directed us to describe them as, and who we don't know if any of the presidents besides James Madison, presidents slash chiefs, know, regardless of who invented that or who made that part of it, chief, because nature itself shows us too how James Madison's plan wouldn't have worked if Native Americans hadn't still been longing to and striving to get back to the unabridged nature of education and communications, where nature answers our questions and shows us them. And relative to the value, how we could value and appreciate our short words rather than to have them stolen, let alone our long words and the value of them. This breaching method showed and shows the names of the people of the sciences, even of the religions. So that's why the religions too have these parts up front. The Old Testament and the Quran have parts up front that were written knowing that people, they would be tools with use of different slash S of different slash S, certain type of victim slash hyper victim by a hyper foreign that measures and maintains A through Z only capable of blaming other things, others, or selves. Right, where, and how. The breaching method shows and has shown the names of the people of the sciences and the counters to them simultaneously. It propagated them to need to hide the same sequence shifts, self-value, remote use slash S of it, collusion slash S. So a Ray Reynolds and a Joe DeMauro were influenced to plant fake ties, fake nature, so people can make pictures, make it look like we had syntax, and ties. There are proofs that they put fake locations together too, with the educators of a Ray Reynolds and people associated with him and his friends, like Eric Jensen, who's one of the ones involved with planting evidence on all sides of my house. Increasingly with Wethersfield Police and fire departments and other agencies, state police, FBI Director Robert Luskin, of federal criminals tied to him, and his co-defendants. As his co-defendants, 3 of them, and their family members. One of them is involved, Thaddeus Skabowski is involved next to Fox Connecticut News, right before a 2006 district court case with people before and after the World Trade Center attack who have collusions there next to Hartford's Fox 61 News. They also have collusions with replacing and changing and faking, hiding, obfuscating what's actually recorded digitally and confirmed digitally. People were confirming things relative to the ones before and after the World Trade Center attack from Connecticut, inter and intra-cities, and on-off campuses, collusion slash S. A bunch of people from Wethersfield affected confessions on my street from people tied to ones on Covington Street and other spots around Central Connecticut State University. Many involved with a Gary Salsa also have Whiting Forensics, the FBI, state police families, and intelligence next to networks, people tied to and as Gail King, and their roles with names next to Central Connecticut State University, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with WFSB involved with multiple natures of organized crimes, and foreign and domestic military next to them, who are also ones next to Fox Connecticut News and the state capitol, is also involved with them with the John Mayano and others, and involved with multiple different types of courts, with medical and sexual offenders of kids and organized crime roles, as courts putting fake things in records to cover how they were used remotely already all too. And the difference of guilt here or at the other countries. They're locking it in too with lawsuits regarding Facebook. See that, like where they're arresting people because of what they said, they're covering up what's actually capable of being discerned, and we're all, we're changing and faking and hiding digital evidences. See, these are people that pretend their differences. They have readings of statutes that give the benefit of the doubt at the last second to identities based on their title, etc., like that. And that's just part of their roles with their styles of pretending not to realize that they use and already use. Criminally foreign influence, tactics, delusions, wrought, readings of statutes, predicate acts, and roles of predicate acts with facts method /S. That one that we know we could discern. And that we know that if we search, there's dishonesty. With black people's whites of eyes. They need a whole bunch of excuses and things and pretended motivations, hyper additional, from the breaching methods on, with where and how it has replaced categorically what our founders communicated, declassified, and what nature itself does at the same time, but yet we still have that replaced. Not one has graced one thing, one subject pure. I have begged you guys to get me off the fake conversations with WFSB and get them into branch onto paper, one name in sequence. Please, Judge Napolitano, they're using your sense and sensibilities remotely. Harvard Hospital has a number of families involved with them, with people who planted evidence on all sides of my house since I was a kid. And they faked ties with me when I was a kid and now as an adult. I still can't get anyone on paper. Please.